Good morning and welcome to Word on the Grid. I am joined today by Julie Driscoll, President of Hyve Group. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you. We've been trying to get this in the diary for I think it's about 4 months since we first connected and I heard your wonderful story.
Thank you.
So before we get into leadership and your career, what I'd like to start with is a simple question. Who is Julie Driscoll?
Oh, interesting. So I would like to say fearless, feisty and fun. That's who I am. I have a photograph of me standing on top of Mount Snowdon when I think I was 5, and my parents we'd walked up there, and it was such a hot day. I walked up there in a little flowery swimming costume, got to the top, and my dad plonked me on top of there's a sort of big rock on the top of Snowdon, and I'm sort of doing that, and that is a photograph that I will always cherish, because that fearless, feisty and fun is certainly the little girl that wanted to explore every aspect of life. And I really feel that that's an image and 3 words that I want to take with me every day. And I don't think I've always been fearless, feisty and fun. I think there's been moments, and we might get into this later, where I definitely wasn't, but rediscovering that aspect of me is definitely something that I'm enjoying, and something that I want to enjoy every day of my working career and beyond.
I love that. It sounds like a picture. If the picture could speak 1,000 words, that would be it.
Yes, for sure.
And it sounds like you started as that fearless, feisty and fun, and we'll explore what happened in between. But
Yes.
Certainly the Julie that I've met, those 3 words just sum you up perfectly. So can we rewind? Maybe how old were you when you were sat on top of Mount Snowdon?
I think I was 5 or 6. Yeah. Very young.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit more about that upbringing then, because at 5 or 6, climbing Mount Snowdon with your parents, that you don't hear about that every day, do you?
That's interesting. So I think more and more people now with social media are discovering the outdoors and mountain climbing and all of that. But so my parents were extremely working class. One of the things that I share with people to give some context is that they had coats for blankets instead of blankets. And that's something that no one would ever think about now. But what it does is it certainly gives you context and a fire in your belly to progress and do better. Their parents were Irish immigrants, and I'm not going to retell the story of Irish immigrants to this audience, but anyone that's new to a nation, they have to work extra hard, and certainly have to forge their own path. So my parents both left school at 14. My dad became a plumber. And my mum was they're both really incredibly intelligent people, never really had the opportunities. My mother, when we were born, went back to education, and slowly did her Open University, then went to Warwick and did a degree. And all that time, as I was growing up, I saw my mother immersed in books, and my father would be reading the books as well. So our whole house was full of books. She did history, and we talked about the themes that she was learning. So when I went to senior school and went to state schools all the way through, the only thing that I said to my teachers is, I'm going to university. And that was my goal, because that was what my mother had done. And what that did is it really framed my whole life, because when you're in a state school that is not in a particularly salubrious area, again, it gives you that fire in your belly. We were very academic, both my sister and I. But what it also did was it lifted my whole family into what I would say a different reality. So my uncle went to university. He followed in my mother's footsteps, as did my auntie. So they all became teachers, and the whole family just lifted themselves economically. So I am a lifelong learner. Totally believe in a growth mindset that every single human being can become better through constant learning. And it opens doors to people where perhaps those doors are closed. So quite a long answer. But those were my formative years, very sort of literary household, very intellectual household, because we were always discussing books and theories and politics and history. So a huge pleasure and privilege to grow up there. And also throughout my senior school years, just that sort of fire to going to university, that is the big thing. It just made me very academic and very determined to explore a different reality. So yeah, that was it.
Amazing. You've painted a really great picture. What sort of messages did you receive as a younger Julie about ambition, power, success? What you had this goal to go to university, but what was it for? What did you want to become?
That's a great question. The reality is that the school that I went to, because of where we lived, it was more about managing behaviors than nurturing high achievers. And what that does is it creates certain expectations of people within the school. So there was myself and a few others that were like, here we are, we want to go to university. And it was a bit like, uh, okay, well, maybe if you're really, really lucky, maybe one of you will get there. And so that lowered my expectations and the bar of what I could achieve. And of course, no one around me had ever gone away to university. So there was one teacher when I got to sixth form who I think took a shine to me. And he said, I know someone who's at Swansea University doing English and American studies. You don't know what you want to do. Go there and you get a year in America and you get to travel and da da da. I was like, oh, okay. So I applied. I applied there. I only went there to see it. I didn't really know about other universities or expectations. And I had the most incredible time. I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was in my sixth form, I did do quite a bit of acting. And when I went to university, I did a lot of acting. And that was a real sort of creative release. I loved literature. I was doing English and American studies at university. So the written word and communication was very important to me. Growing up in a family of Irish Catholics, the written word and telling a story is really important. So communication is something that's run through my family and runs through my veins. So it's hardly a surprise that I did end up actually going to drama school after university. But when I was at university itself, very few of us would sit there and go, we're going to be a lawyer or we're going to be an accountant or whatever. And I think things have really changed now. It's a very sort of, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. But when I was at university, the joy of learning and the joy of talking about books way into the middle of the night or politics or history, it was an absolute privilege to be with people from all over the world and particularly when I went to America as well, being with people from many different nations of many different backgrounds and seeing how people approach life from their own experiences, it really enables you to have that global context of things, which has really helped me in business.
Yeah, what an opportunity, spending time in the States in your sort of late teens, early
Yeah,
20s, and
yeah.
away from your family. Did you have any concerns about leaving your family, or were you just so excited to go out and explore the world?
No, I was very fearless in that regard.
Yeah,
Just I did miss them when I was there, but no, I I,
yeah.
I was no problem there.
Clearly your mum and you've mentioned various family members who have
Yes.
all sort of um impressed you throughout your sort of teens and things. Were there any other people that really sort of backed you, people that you aspired to be like?
Interestingly, we weren't surrounded by I, where would you come across sort of great business people or I used to read The Observer. My mum got The Observer at the weekend, so I would read The Observer, and I would look at different fashion designers or writers or things like that. So that was my frame of reference. If I'm honest, is really looking at people within the Sunday papers, but when I was at university, I just became very focused on uh, actors and literature. So it was, rather than being impressed by business, my world was very different then. It was very much focused on how can I get into the world of acting? Is that something that I could make a living out of? And ultimately, after I left drama school, I did actually make a living from being an actor. But I was the original gig economy. So I did lots of sales and marketing at the same time. And somebody basically said, you should do sales, you should do marketing. You're a really good communicator. And I moved to London. And so some years I was doing lots and lots of sales, and other years I was doing lots and lots of acting. But what it enabled me is to have this dual career. And I met people who, my first roles were in publishing. So I met people who were journalists, who were marketing directors, sales directors, um, launching the first draft of websites and digital assets and taking brands into the next stage of their evolution. So that when I had my children and decided not to be an actor anymore, it was an easy pivot because I'd already had many years of being in and around that space. But when you're freelance in that space, what's great is that people ask you to do a whole host of things. So they would ask me to write articles, which I did, review things, which I also did, which was great fun, and got involved in the marketing space very early. So really understanding that and consumer research, because the first part of my career very much focused on consumer brands. And when you're focused on consumer brands, everything is about understanding the customer. It's the same in B2B, but for consumer, really understanding how the customer thinks, the route to market, how they absorb their content, whether it be they're opening Instagram at breakfast time, they're looking at TikTok at 9:30, and they log into LinkedIn at 11. It's really understanding how they interact with media throughout the course of the day, how they're using the brand that you are responsible for, what it means to them. How do we drive brand love and brand loyalty? So when we're working in the consumer space and working on subscription models, all of those kinds of things is about deeply empathizing with the customer. And I think that's one of my superpowers, being an actor, you have to empathize with a character and step into the shoes of a character. When you are marketing to any customer, you have to step into the shoes of the customer. And that's something that I take very seriously every single day, because if we understand our end customer, and in B2B, our customer's customer, then we can win. If we know what problems we're trying to solve for them and what opportunities we're trying to unlock for them, then we can create products that work for them. And we can walk forwards together for many, many years. And it's when you lose touch with the customer that you actually can see businesses decline. So I feel very privileged to have worked in the consumer space, and have worked with some brilliant customers. Some of my customers that I repped were Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, and worked with all the best media agencies across London. And that teaches you an awful lot about how brands monitor their brand share and their brand voice, and that we can only be top of our game if we're constantly communicating with the media agency, the brands themselves, the PR companies, etc., etc. So a lot of learning.
Yeah, it's such a unique story, and definitely not your traditional route into leadership. So let's get into that now,
Yes.
Because I mean, you clearly displayed from a very young age some raw leadership competencies, but just it sounds like you've sort of almost followed something that you really loved doing and actually ended up, studying something you were really passionate about, that constant thirst for learning, that curiosity, then went and used it through, being an actress and drama school, but also having to actually earn a living because my cousin's very similar to your story, based in LA, and the amount of jobs that he's had to do. He went to the Guildhall, and so he's American, came over to the Guildhall, and then is now in LA. But the amount of jobs he's had to do to support his real passion is incredible, and now he's actually a PT and going on tour with a globally famous R&B singer as her PT. Wow. So so he's found his way. But I'm so interested to hear kind of this next part of your story, Julie. You've had your children now. How many children have you got?
I've got 2 children, Isabel and Louis. Yeah.
Oh, and so you've had your children now. You've realised that you aren't going to continue, earning a living through your acting. You've got all these incredible skills that you've learned across sales, customer experience, customer journey, media marketing. How did you then start progressing and realising you were destined to be a leader?
So somebody I've kept in touch with for many, many years, Natasha Christie Miller, was the CEO of EMAP. And she reached out to me and offered me a role. And the rest is history, actually. She brought me in to launch a website on a brand that's called Mother and Baby. And that is a magazine. I believe it's still going. I hope it's still going. And we launched the first website for that. So it was a really exciting time. I did lots of, that's when I was repping Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark and many, many other brands. And very, very quickly, I went into I became a manager. I then became a director. And sort of the one thing that acting teaches you is to be totally in the moment, to be very focused. So that's what I applied to the world of work in a permanent contract, and it stood me in good stead. So anything that I did, I applied myself to it fully and read as much as I could. I read everything about websites and worked with the digital marketing agencies to really understand what the customers wanted from websites at that time. What does success look like? And we were all learning then about how to measure return on investment from these nascent websites. So it was an incredible place to be. And what I was able to do is, throughout my years in consumer, just build up to that direct level. And then I moved over to the B2B side of EMAP, and became a brand director and then a publisher, and ran many different businesses, running the P&Ls, again, taking legacy brands and walking them forwards into the next stage of their evolution. And what was exciting there is, when you have a tribe which is associated with a brand, an ecosystem that is associated with a brand, you can then, through research, really understand where that followership wants to go. Do you want live events? Do you want more subscription products? Do you want physical magazines? What is it that is really useful to you and your business on a daily basis? How can we drive growth for you? And so being able to do that and realize growth across the many different businesses that I ran, it was a really exciting time. And again, through always putting the customer at the heart of every decision that we made, enables us to be on the front foot and to be driving that growth. I latterly moved into events. So I've been in events for around 15 years now. And this is a different space, where the main product are live events. But again, it's the same methodology. You have a brand in the center, and often that brand might be supported by a magazine. It might be supported by an awards. What is it that your customer groups want? Do they just want to meet up once a year? Or do they actually want a series of roundtables or dinners or whatever it might be to have those high level conversations throughout the course of the year? So I think that starting my journey in consumer, really putting the customer at the heart of everything we do, and then moving into the live event space, has enabled me to just carry on my career journey and constantly reinvent the brands that I've inherited. I think one of the things that was a pivotal moment is I got stuck at a director role. I've been in the role for around 3 years, and I wanted to be managing director and couldn't quite figure out how I was going to get there within the company that I was in at the time. So what I did is I took myself off and did an executive MBA at Imperial College Business School. And that really, I think, was pivotal for me. I hadn't studied business before. I obviously I studied English and American studies, very different. So fully immersing myself in the language of the boardroom for 2 years, and the people that I met with, it just enabled me to have a lot more confidence and be very cognizant about my own career plan and where I wanted to go. What was a message I wanted to share with everyone is I got a scholarship, and that scholarship was funded half by the Imperial College Business School and half by a group called the 30% Club. The 30% Club exists to get more women into the boardroom. So I was very privileged to be awarded that scholarship. And why I was awarded it was because of the many different businesses that I'd ran, the exposure to running P&Ls, and the ambitions that I had moving forwards to become a CEO, become a president. And they really wanted to help me on that journey. So I got extra mentoring across the 2 years at the business school. And I think what that has taught me is that being able to speak the language of business is really important. understanding whether it be annual reviews, understanding everything that your CFO talks about, whether it be the weighted average cost of capital or everything from gross profit to net profit. Those are very basic things, but really being able to dissect annual reports or due diligence reports when they come in, when you're buying companies, acquiring companies, you've really got to be all over the numbers, and you've got to be all over the future growth, the current and future growth of an organization. And being at the business school and doing all the different courses from corporate finance through to many courses on strategy, it really opened doors for me and enabled me to get that managing director role and then CEO role that I did later. So that's really how I fast track things.
It's super helpful that you've shared that journey, because I think you hear a lot about particularly women getting to a functional director role.
Yes.
Doing a really, really good job, but almost believing that narrative that the roles above them aren't meant for them.
Yes.
And hearing your journey, and that's why I was so keen to have you on this podcast as a guest, because there is that you need to believe in yourself and find ways around things. If you're feeling like you are getting sort of stuck or pigeonholed or ceilinged in your career, there are ways to navigate that, and you're sort of showing and demonstrating that through this story now. Can we just rewind? I was really keen to just touch on a little bit about when you started sort of really moving into your leadership career in business. How old were you when you started at EMAP?
I was, goodness me, in my 30s. I'm not going to give you exact dates here. I don't want to out my exact age, because people are ageist. They're very ageist. But I was in my 30s. So I'd
bit of life experience.
A bit of life experience before. 2 kids under my belt. And it was, I had managed people actually intermittently with no management training. So at EMAP, I was very privileged to have lots and lots of management training. They were an organization, it still exists, but back then EMAP was an organization that would put you on a year-long management training course, send you off for lots of remote, you'd go off to a destination and there'd be external coaches, and we were very spoilt, I have to say. And they gave you all of the basics of management training. And then as you progressed up, and I've been very lucky throughout the course of my career I've had a coach now for the past, I think, at least 15 years, a personal coach, and many different leadership courses, mentors. So I have been lucky in that respect. And I know that many organizations don't do this now. I think some of the big ones do, but I know that some of the smaller organizations don't. And often people will be put in management positions without having had any training whatsoever. So where I am right now, I'm very passionate about ensuring people have exposure to management before they actually walk into the job.
Yes, it's the accidental manager, isn't it?
Yes, completely.
I see it all the time. Why is that person not performing, having been, a top performer? Well, you've essentially asked them to do a role and not given them any tools to do it. But you're right, EMAP, I remember EMAP and Yellow Pages, and there were some of the businesses that were really renowned for investing in their people, continual professional
right.
development.
Yes.
So that's really interesting.
Mm.
And was there anybody sort of along that journey as you moved into sort of middle management and then senior management that was really a sponsor for you, Julie?
So Natasha Christie Miller was
Yeah.
very much along my journey. She basically helped me along the way. Alison Jackson, who's another person, she's now CEO of 19 Group, gave me opportunities in lots of roles. And Mark Shashua, who's my CEO now, very much championed me and is a huge champion of women. He's employed many executives when they're pregnant, and just it doesn't faze him to be surrounded by talented women. So, and then people outside of the organization who are in very different roles, women who I've met along the way, just being able to sense check different decisions and having that network is really important. What I would say is that now it is much easier with remote working and obviously with Teams and all of us communicating in this way to build your network and to have, whether it be a virtual coffee or a virtual breakfast with someone. Even a decade ago, it was much harder. It was much harder. And when you're a mother, and I think that the biggest challenge actually I've faced in my career is being able to balance time between being a mother and being able to fully commit to the role. And one thing that I think I would love to share with many women out there is that I was not always fearless, feisty, and fun. I think for a huge chunk of my career, I was subsumed by putting my family first always, and that I didn't do the networking, I didn't do the after drinks because I just couldn't. It was get to work, fully in the office working, no remote working whatsoever. And you're always on that time scale of getting back for the childcare, whatever it might be at the time. And my husband was in full-time work. I traveled a lot. So that juggling meant that the networking took a back seat. Now I really try to build it into every single week, even if it's just a 15-minute virtual conversation with someone outside of my organization, because it brings energy to me. I also try to have a reverse mentor, which is a mentor that's somebody younger than me that is teaching me as much about life, the universe, and business as potentially I'm sharing with them. So that's a great relationship to have, and what's something I would recommend. But I think it's fine to think about your career as an opus, and that we've all got different chapters in that opus. When my son went to university, or was applying to go to university, something switched in my brain. And that's when I thought, I want to be a CEO. It was like a physiological reaction. So
Wow.
I don't know, I don't know whether I have spoken to other mothers, but I became a lot braver. And I hope that other women can sort of unlock their potential, free themselves much earlier than I could. I just became I must retain my role. I must retain the role that I'm in. I must stay in the company that I'm in because it's the safe choice. I was like a lioness with her cubs. I don't know whether you've heard that
it's
from
like
anyone
protective
else.
mode. I absolutely do. And it's a fundamental problem, really,
Yes.
because I think there are so many women out there that know they're destined for more, that they know they're capable for more, but actually almost like they need some calm and stability in one pocket of their life because they are pulled from pillar to post, everything, they just have no fat in the system. So there's absolutely zero breathing space to, step out of your comfort zone, raise your head above the parapet and aim for more. And I think that's, one of my goals really in creating Word of the on the Grid is because I want to showcase, that women can do it. They can continue down that career path and progress, even, when they're still raising a family. But it everything you're saying rings true because there are so few women out there who are actively looking for a new role when it comes to executive level. And the way you've just described it, like this kind of physiological shift that you experienced is probably very similar to what many women are going through. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And maybe others don't quite recognize it as clearly as you did at the time. So yeah, really interesting. So can you tell us a bit more about what the role of president at Hyve Group entails? What is your role?
So I look after 21 events. These events are global events. They are everything from large-scale summits through to smaller trade events, trade shows. So we look within my division. My division is New Next Gen. And Hyve Group, we are a global events organizer. We're one of the fastest growing top 10 event companies in the world. And we have doubled the size of the company in the last 3 years. Last year, we delivered 100 million EBITDA. This year, we'll deliver 120 million EBITDA. And we're looking to double the size of the company in the next 3 years. We've been on an incredible growth journey. You may know each and every company will create a value creation plan. We created ours in 2024. It was called Go 27. And we've delivered our Go 27 plan in 26. So we're now merrily creating our next value creation plan. What we look after within my division, we look after education technology. We look after energy transition. We look after manufacturing, logistics, and retail sourcing. And we have events that are Go From Bet, which is a legacy event. It brings the education ecosystem together with edtech vendors from around the globe. We have an event in London, one in Brazil, one in Asia, and we're launching one in Nashville in 2027. And alongside that, we have ASU GSV, which was last week in San Diego, and that brings together the top tier CEOs, edtech vendors, and the whole education ecosystem across the States and beyond, but mainly the States. So you have the president of Stanford there, of Harvard, et cetera, and the organization there is just phenomenal. Talking about what's going to be the next iteration of edtech. So it's a huge privilege to be able to drive these events forwards. They are absolutely pivotal for creating resilient economies of the future. And my job is to obviously manage the P&Ls across all of those events. So it's a very large P&L, and to drive growth. We are in the business of capturing market share, retaining more customers, expanding our portfolio, all underpinned by excellent execution. And that's our current 4 key levers for driving our value creation plan. And we've done it fantastically well. So I'm extremely proud and privileged to be in the role. The next value creation plan will obviously be to drive further growth with more acquisitions that are in adjacent sectors to where my division is now, or brand new sectors. And we are a business that only buys market leading events in sectors that are high growth. So we don't buy businesses, we just buy the events. And that's a really great strategy because it enables us to invest in those things that are showing huge potential for growth, that are number one in their ecosystems or could be number one. And our DNA, there was a Forbes article that Mark Sheshua, my CEO, had an interview with Forbes last week. And within the face of AI, so when all the world's AI as it is, and all of us are going to be managing AI agents within real life human beings, what's coming through more and more is that real life events are capturing more of the marketing spend than paid search or other marketing channels. So we're in a really good space. Live events is coming back as a very strong area of everyone's marketing budget. It's a place where senior level people can meet with other senior level decision makers. And we pride ourselves on having a meetings platform. And that meetings platform has an algorithm where you can put in who you want to meet. So it might be, I want to meet executive women in these ecosystems. And similarly, executive women might put in, I want to meet executive search firms with a specialist in this. And then we match people and they meet on site at our summits. So that return on investment and return on time is something that people really value. And in addition, I spoke to many edtech companies last week in San Diego at ASU GSV, and they said that I will do the majority of my annual meetings in the 4 days of this event. So it's
Wow.
back-to-back meetings. And more companies are having their annual internal meetups pre our events because you've got more and more people remote working. So they will do their own summits pre our events. So it's where you bring all the ecosystems together, and it's hugely successful and something I think that people will be leaning into a lot more. So anyone out there,
Incredible.
any women out there that are thinking of a career change and exploring live events, please do reach out to me.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. It just, yeah, I can see so clearly the events in the last few years, post COVID. I think pre-COVID, it was kind of a thing that had always been done, and it was just part of your job. And I think having those few years where we just weren't going to events it enabled the industry to kind of have a bit of a pause, a bit of a check-in on what the consumer or what the customer actually wants. And it's almost like it has come back, especially I found in 2026, bigger and better than ever. And I love that idea of actually, involving other internal stakeholders in going to events and creating that more internal summit or business, internal get together pre-event. That's a really, really good idea. Especially when you're bringing people in from sort of various continents.
Yes.
As well. So amazing. Well, we're out of time, Julie, and I've got so much more I want to hear from you. But we've spoken in such a lot of depth about the forming of Julie Driscoll and then the career journey. I am really keen to kind of finish with understanding sort of if you could go back to giving Julie a message at the age of 15, if you could talk to 15-year-old Julie tomorrow, what message would you give her?
So my leadership mantra and the way I live my life in the world of work is cool head, warm heart, constantly curious. That's how I live my everyday. I share this with all of my direct reports and my whole division. That's how I hold myself to account. And I think that being true to that is really important. I also think that knowing what your value drivers are is really important. So the things that drive me each and every day are family, well-being, integrity, and authenticity. So those things, to remember that that's what's important, and don't compromise on those things. So allow those to guide you, allow those to be your North Star. And if you lean into those on a daily basis, you'll find strength, and you'll find a sort of spine of just direction, which enables you to tackle whatever you face each and every day. Also, on a scale of 1 to 10, where death is 10, how important is the issue that you're facing today? And usually it's not even a 1. So put things into perspective and lean into the joy of every day.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, from the story that you've shared with us, I'm so inspired, but it sounds like those values are something that you have genuinely lived since you were that little 5-year-old girl on top of Mount Snowdon. I've absolutely loved this conversation. And our audience, if you've enjoyed it too, we've got many more inspirational leaders joining us on Word on the Grid. So please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you so much.